Well, everyone, welcome to the closing conversation of Online Educa Berlin. Don started the workplace strand yesterday with an opening conversation, and we've always tried over the last number of years to kind of gather together and go, and have a bit of a chance to reflect, a chance to maybe talk to some people we've not met before, and a chance to just kind of reset before we move out into the big wide world. So my name's Laura Overton, and actually this has been kind of part of my ethos being part of Online Educa for a number of years now. And it was quite a few years ago, I was trying to work out how many, Don, when we really wanted to put a focus on the business angle of the work that we do. It's a great opportunity to stretch ourselves by connecting with new people. But actually, what does it mean for us who are working in the world of work? How do we apply all of these ideas? So I was working in the very early days with Jay Cross, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He passed away a number of years ago, but was always out there in terms of his ideas. Let's try something new. Let's do an unconference. Let's explore. Let's have lots of conversations. And Jay has been very close with Charles Jennings, who is always here. He has been Online Educa for a number, I think about 20 years. And many of you may or may not know him from his work that he does with the 70-20-10 Institute. And I basically just tagged along through the work that I was doing. My name's Laura Overton, and I was very much involved in kind of analysing and researching what's going on in the world of work right now. And it was Jay that actually came up with an idea in his normal, relaxed way of encouraging conversation and just chilling out a little bit at the end of the conference. And he came up with this idea of having an advent calendar. And he basically stood at the lectern and he said, pick a number, any number. And behind every number, he had a little bit of a story or an anecdote or just something that was fun. And when Jay passed away 5 years ago, Charles and I thought it would be a really brilliant idea to keep a little bit of Jay going in our philosophy and to keep back with that Advent calendar. So now we have a version of our own Advent calendar, which means that you're in the driving seat of what goes on now. We pick a number, we see what's behind it, and we give it a go. And that's what the closing conversation is all about. So here is the Advent calendar. There's a whole range of different topics. Why doesn't someone, you look lovely. Would you like to choose? Would you like to choose a number? All you have to do is choose a number.
Yeah, of course I can.
5. Number 5, please. My best friends are now on the mixing desk now. 5. We're going to be thinking about paradox. Lots of different things that have been going on in conflict. Stella, I'm so glad you just walked in just there. I just texted her and said, we're about to start. Would you like to come up, Stella? And just kind of share some thoughts on, was this your second Online Educa?
Yes.
It is, isn't it? And we were discussing this last night about all the opportunity to kind of stretch our thinking. Stella Collins, everyone.
So, hello. I think paradox is really fascinating, and it's possibly because I'm a very indecisive person. And I hear one point of view, and then I hear another point of view, and I think, but they've both got something going for them. And I was really interested yesterday when Font started talking about paradox and how, it's two-sided. And then it reminded me of, if any of you know Leah Locker, and she's actually done a really interesting YouTube recently about beyond kind of binary and into kind of, is there a multary? I don't know what it might be, but kind of even beyond paradox, but kind of a three-dimensional paradoxical conversations. And I think listening to these sessions that I've been hearing over the last couple of days, there's lots of paradoxes in there. Is it the tech that's important? Is it the learning that's important? Where are we going with paradox, and how do we solve paradox? And I also do some work with Professor Stephen Pullmans at Antwerp University. And we're looking at the paradoxes of leadership. And there's a particular organisation we're working with, and they've got some really interesting values, but their values are paradoxical as well, because they've got this kind of care and connect, but they've also got operational excellence. And how do they match those together? How do they manage to care for people and yet still achieve the targets really ambitious targets they've set themselves? And how do they manage to get their really ambitious targets and at the same time make sure that people are looked after along the way? So I just think that paradox is a really interesting place to be, and I think it can make us feel a little puzzled and confused and sometimes not sure, but also it allows us to flex and kind of have that, well, in this circumstance, this is probably the best thing to do, and in this one, this may be the best thing to do. And actually maybe there's a middle route somewhere.
Thank you. Thanks, Stella. I don't need that, do I? Did anyone else feel that there were kind of paradoxes kind of being presented to them during this last few days? One version of here and one version there. Did anyone else kind of feel that? Great, you guys were all on board then with the messages. But I think paradox is good because it stretches our thinking. And I think, although we don't want our thinking stretched right now at the end of the conference, when we go back on Monday, it's going to be quite a good thing for us to be kind of saying, actually, we don't always have to be in one lane. We can be stretched. And I think that's what Online Educa has always done for me. So thanks for kickstarting us. Who would like to choose another number? No, okay, no one else. Geraldine, would you like to choose a number?
I'll go for the cat, number 1.
We're going for the cat. We're going for the cat. Number 1, please. Beyond cute. We've just come out of a session looking at curiosity and the essence of curiosity. And Shannon Tipton was supposed to be here over from the States, and she was talking to us in that session through video about us being intentionally curious, intentionally focused, and how do we do that? The kind of questions that we need to ask about, what if I do that differently? What if I let go of that assumption? How can I help solve that problem? So she actually gave us a worksheet that we could be more intentionally curious about, and I've got a link for you at the end of this that we can download. But what I would love is for us to just physically, if you would like, just turn chairs in and talk to each other about what's piqued your curiosity here at Online Educa. What are you going to go away more curious about as a result of you being here? So yeah, please feel free to move the chairs, because we can now. We can be rebels. But we can't put them too close. We can't put them too close. That's the important thing. Keep your masks on. Don't get too close. Be safe. So we've got a couple of people who might be willing to share the stuff that's piqued their curiosity. Just give us a little tiny glimpse into what you're curious about that you're going to be taking away. So the microphone will come around and just give us a little glimpse into your conversation. So was there anything in this conversation here about what Pete Volchek would you be willing to share? What was on your mind? It's really bad news when I know your names. just a little moment about what piqued your curiosity.
Okay, I'll share my contribution to this wonderful three of us. Well, I'm curious about how this tension between a human side of technology and the technological side of technology will play out in the future. Who's going to be stronger, our skepticism and desire to control it, or the technology that overrides all the ambition to control it? I would like to know.
Yeah. Wow, that's great, because it sparked all of our curiosity, I think, here, that kind of play between the two, whether it's down to the skills agenda that we were talking about on Wednesday, or whether it's how we actually conduct our day-to-day work in learning and development, or what's going on in the globe as well. So a big one for you to be curious about. Does anyone else kind of share that with Wojciech? I know I certainly do. Any others, maybe in this corner here? Was there things that you've been curious about as a result of being here? Thank you.
Okay, so actually I'm super curious how we're going to manage in the future the issue in hybrid model actually for learning from our side, because now it's a huge question, right? How are we going to manage it if we will, for example, change into in-person learning, or we going to stay in virtual, or we're gonna, observe and find some proper tools for these hybrid models.
Yeah,
that's why I'm curious about.
Thank you. I think many of us are curious because we're having to live through those experiments as we speak. We were doing a hybrid learning experiment on Wednesday, and then another hybrid learning experiment yesterday afternoon when I was supposed to be zooming in the co-presenter of the session that I was on. One was orchestrated, it was a clever dance, everyone knew their steps, their moves. The other wasn't orchestrated, it wasn't a clever dance, and we were stumbling over and treading on each other's toes. But we got some great feedback for both of those sessions because of the way people connected and the way that people were being given permission to connect regardless of the spaces that they were in. So I think there are a lot of lessons for us to learn, but a lot of experiments potentially along the way as well. And I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to play out for Online Educa and for the conferences that we go to as well. So thank you for that. Okay, let's move on. Who would like to choose the next? Someone in the back row would like to choose another number for us. 4. Oh, what would Elvis do? Okay. Well, it's another conversation starter. We need to go back and do something. I think one of the biggest things that we're good at doing here in our industry is that we like to talk about the latest things. We like to discover the latest things. We like to read the research on the latest things. We like to look at the books along the latest things. We like to debate the latest things. We like to ponder and wonder and dig into the latest things. But we also need to act. So the question that I have, and maybe let's go back into those groups because you can pick up the conversations as you went along, is what are you going to act on? What are you going to do differently? And it's not just, you've been to a learning experience, choose one thing. But genuinely, if you're going to make a commitment, if you're going to think about coming back next year, what action do you want to be known for taking? What difference do you want to be known for making? And as I say, you're probably with a whole group of strangers, so no one's going to actually hold you accountable. But if you want to exchange emails, I would encourage that as well, because, it's about action. I believe strongly our industry can make such a difference to individuals, to teams, to organizations, to society. But we need to take action. So back into the groups and let's have a conversation about what do we want to do differently in the coming year, or what do we want to be known for doing differently in the coming year. All right, okay, sorry. No, this is good, thank you. Can I have a post-it note? I'm going to ask that we don't necessarily feedback on that level of the conversation because it's personal. You know, it's that these things are really important to you about what you want to be able to do for next year. You know, one of the reasons why I love to come back to Online Educa regularly is because you see stories progress. We see speakers next year who had been inspired the year before or the year before that, and they had done something and they've made a difference in their business as a result of that, and they came back to share. So, you know, for me, you know, I'm looking at the next few years' speakers here in the room because your story is going to be worth sharing. You know, you've got an opportunity right now to be able to make a difference, and I think more so than we've ever done before. So I'm not going to ask for feedback on that session, but I am going to say, you know, keep hold of those dreams because everyone has got a story to tell, and we'd love to hear your stories for next year. So we've got a few more left on the screen. Who else would like to choose one? Rolf, did you want to choose one for me? No, you don't have to pick your own. Funnily enough, Rolf's going to be coming up soon, so choose us a number. Marlena, 8. Now, I don't suppose anyone here has been to the Marlena Bar at all, have you? No. No, you haven't been. You've been really good. You've been sitting there in the chairs and not talking to anyone. Well, in years gone by, i.e. pretty much every Online Educa, ever since it started, most of the conversations have gone on in the Marlena Bar. And it's where our connections happen. So although he can't be here, I asked Charles Jennings to kind of share a few reflections on conversation. So would you mind playing that for us? Thank you.
Connections and conversations are both very important elements of Online Educa. They happen all over the place, in the formal sessions, in the exhibition areas, over breakfast and lunch, and no more than in the Marlena Bar. Ever since the OEB event moved to the Intercontinental Hotel back in 1996, the Marlena Bar has been a really important focus point for people to get together and discuss what they're doing, what they've heard, what they've seen, and to share stories and ideas lubricated by coffee, beer, and stronger stuff as well. I've learned a huge amount and formed friendships with more people than I could possibly mention by name for fear of forgetting someone in the Marlena Bar over the years. For me, one aspect of building connections is that they're absolutely critical for creating a level of resilience. Without the opportunity to discuss and share, we all lose something of ourselves, as well as losing opportunities to test our ideas and to challenge other people's ideas as well. Now, I regularly think back to something Jerome Brunner, the great educational and cognitive psychologist, once said. And Brunner said this, he said, "Our world is others." In other words, without other people, our world simply doesn't exist. And that really fits my experience. And I don't know if it fits yours, but it certainly does mine. I've also found that conversations and networks are important ways that adults learn and develop. This graphic by Tenmei Vora pulls together those ideas. We learn from rich and challenging experiences, from opportunities to practice, from our conversations and the richness and diversity of our networks, and through reflective practice. Now, I've sat in the Marlena Bar on many occasions, making connections, having ideas challenged and challenging others, and building friendships and relationships. As many of us, I guess, I'm sure that's resulted in building a rich and diverse network of people that I can not only rely on to give me a broad perspective, but also a network that helps me personally build some resilience into my working and personal life. I'm sure everyone else would agree that conversations in the Marlena Bar are a really important part of the learning that we all take away from our time in Berlin.
Thank you, Charles. And the conversations we have here are important as well, and the friendships that we build here are really important too. And I know I've met a number of people through Berlin, and we only see each other once a year or once every other year, but we look out for each other, and we're interested in each other's progress, and we connect with each other. And I think that's what is unique about Online Educa Berlin compared with any other conference that any of the rest of us have been to. So thank you so much for being part of our network on this journey. So who would like to choose the next one for me? Yes, I can see that you all really, let me put it another way. The faster we get through these, the faster you can leave. So who would like to choose the next one for me? Thank you, Stella. What? Number 9, practice. But I really was gutted that I couldn't make your session on practice. So I was really excited when you actually agreed to share a little bit about it.
So because of Laura's curiosity, we're going to have to redo a little part of the session on Wednesday. No, actually, I don't remember how many times I've been here, but this year I came in with a very simple pronounce it for me.
Realization.
What she said. And it was, there's an imbalance in the force in all the stuff we do for learning, like the 4 things Charles was showing or the 9 things in whatever model. I think we focus so much on content that we forget there are some other things. If we put a bit more time and effort in it, may actually make our learning stronger, better, faster, whatever. So we had a session on what's all that and so on, but then, and this links into next year. So suppose next year we want to have this good intention, we're going to have a bit more practice in the stuff we do. There's going to be things in the way, right? And this is a little role play exercise to bring that out. It's probably fun, but I'll leave that up to you. It works best with 3 people. You can also do it with 2 people. If you do it alone, it's a bit sad, but I'm not judging. So 2 or 3 people. Person 1 is Mr. or Mrs. or however you identify, great ID. And you will bring a great idea how to do more practice next year. The second person plays the role of Mr., Mrs., however you identify, yes, but. I can see some devil horns already going up in some people who are dying to take that role. Have a blast. So you will object with all kinds of things why that can't be the case, right? And you're open to having solved the case, but you're basically throwing in obstacles. And then the third person, if there's a third person, is the observer who makes note of what are like the generic roadblocks to having more practice in. What are people mentioning? We'll do this for a couple of minutes. You choose your own favorite people next to you, except the one. No, and in a couple of minutes, I'm just gonna. You will tell Laura what are the roadblocks because she's the one who collects data. All right?
You're not sitting down there. Okay. You are so in this with me.
Have some fun. Find 2 other people. Do the role play. Great idea. Yes, but how can we get more practice in? say more? Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up, ding dong, or something like that. See, I've told it in the session on, what was it, Thursday, yesterday, is that this is what I miss the most in face-to-face sessions, to be able to interrupt great conversations. I used to be so good at it, and I don't get the chance too much anymore. So observers, or if you are your own observers, just throw in the big roadblocks of the little role play. What will next year probably stand in the way of getting more practice in our stuff? Anyone? Tell it to Laura. Tell it to Laura. Time. It keeps coming up, right? How many years ago this LinkedIn Workplace report that the biggest obstacle to workplace learning is at least a perception of having time? Do you remember what number 2 roadblock there was? Yeah, make management give a damn was basically number 2 there. Thank you. Time. Jay Cross would have lost that time. Yes, please. The pressure to deliver. So it needs to be, I mean, what's the ROI? What's the business case? That kind of stuff as well, yeah. User acceptance. And I find, for example, in a class, that's about the beauty of classroom. You can make people do anything in a classroom. Have you tried? You can make them build spaghetti tower. You can make them do anything, right? So including role plays. But I'll do the experiment again here. So, hello, would you like to role play with me? In a hashtag #MeToo environment, that's kind of really weird. I mean, also in a workplace, just finding people. There's a threshold also for just finding the other people to practice with and other things. Any other roadblock you discovered? Yes, please. That's not how we do it. We know how to do this. We do it with content and it works fine. Thank you very much.
We forget the fact that practice is actually about doing. Most of us, I haven't had a teacher or been in a course or a class for 40 years, you know, but I've learned most of what I've learned by doing, and that's why the big shift, I think, is towards real doing. All this LXP workflow is right, and we should be dumping this resilience, curiosity, you know, this like schoolboy essay type stuff. You know, some HR person comes up with some word, and then we build a course around it, and people go, "What's it? What is resilience? I have no idea what that is. Why should I do a course on resilience?" When they should be doing, when they should be practicing, they should be doing their job and learning from that, because that's relevant. I think we've got too abstract, too obtuse.
So abstraction gets in the way as well. Abstraction gets in the way. But you were just at a conference on resilience, Don.
Sorry?
You were just at a conference on the theme of resilience.
Yeah, no, but I would never have chosen that word. I've never, you know, you only ever hear the word resilience at conferences. Ordinary people never use that word. Imagine going into a bar and saying, "Hi, Donald, have you been resilient this year?" I think you were mad. What are you talking about? Ordinary people don't talk like this. Employees don't use words like resilience.
So,
don't.
and this is why we call it a conversation, everybody. And this is why the Marlene Bar is so
Trainers use
important in the life of the Online Educa Berlin, because we need to be challenging each other about how we can really make a difference, really get things done. So, yeah, I've just taken your time now. Thank you so much, Bert. Fantastic. Now, oh my goodness, look what's on the board. We'll leave the future one to the end if that's okay. So we've got number 2, we've got number 6, and we've got number 2, and we've got number 6. So which, have we not had number 3? Oh no, we haven't had number 3 either. Don, would you like to choose number 6? Is that what you were really saying? It's like, normally I have to put on this thing about resilience, but actually I really want to choose number 6. I think that's what it was, wasn't it? So, who would like to choose a number? Number 6! Excellent, excellent. Well, I would like to introduce you to my 2 new best friends here at the conference, Barbara and Irina, who did an incredibly pragmatic, business-oriented, let's get down to the fact that we need to have a new type of behavior in organizations in order to make money, in order to adapt, in order to innovate, in order to collaborate, in order to connect. The resilience ladies, everyone.
So you see how resilient we are because we are here talking to you, you know? So what is resilience? Resilience is, you said companies don't talk about it or employees don't talk about it, right? When it comes to resilience, let's put it in a frame. There are obstacles. There are obstacles why people don't get promoted. There are obstacles why managers reject your ideas. There are budgets that don't fit to your personal career planning. And the question is, are you dealing with that? Are you accepting it? Or are you finding a way to overcome that and find a positive outcome? So that's how we define resilience. Practical usage, Irina, we had a couple of practical ways to do it, and I agree with what Bert said. We should practice it next year in our own workshop. So thank you for adding us to the agenda for 2022.
Well, yes, resilience can be an abstract construct, absolutely, for some people. And this is the thing about resilience. We all have experience of it, but we all have different experience of it and different ways of describing it. The word resilience has been bouncing around for years and years and years. Yes, yeah, I agree with you. And until 2 years ago, I was pretty skeptical about it. Yeah, I thought, oh, well, you know, resilience, yeah, sustainability. Lately, for the past 2 years, it acquired more personal significance for me, as well as people around me. And actually, the people, the employees use the word resilience in our organization first, because we did a survey, the impact of remote working on people. And people very honest and openly said, you know, some actually thrived, but most people did not. Yeah, and the people said, we want, what will help us is to be more resilient. Yeah, that's how it's all started. So yes, we do use the word resilience, and you know the question about what sparked the curiosity in the conference. For me, it was how the old, not old, but words we all know and have used for ages begin to fill up with the new content. And one of these things for me is resilience. What I offered at the conference this time is a very practical experience to resilience, how to learn it as a skill. Yeah, and you start with a very practical thing. And one of the practical things you do first, you define for yourself what resilience is for you. And we ask people to think of a metaphor or a word which comes to your mind when you say the word resilience. I know putting you on the spot, and I know some people in the room attended the session. But if I do put you on the spot and I say the word resilience, what kind of image or metaphor comes up for you? Sisyphus pushing the stone up the mountain. Okay. Any more suggestions? Spring as in spring of water, or?
As in a metal spring, you put
Okay, like springy thing, metal, yeah. Okay, anything else?
A rain jacket instead of an umbrella.
Okay, right, okay.
Because you can move and actually be agile moving, while an umbrella actually will just hold you.
Yes, fixed, yeah, okay.
For me, it's breathing.
Yes, breathing, okay. So you can see that resilience actually is a living and breathing thing. It's not an abstract concept. It's how you approach it. And if you give people a way to express it, then that's what we get, yeah? Resilience means different things. It's bouncy, it's springy, it has movement. It's living, it's breathing, yeah? It's not fixed. It's not the umbrella which you stick up and hoping the rain will not get to you, yeah? So, so that resilience, therefore, that's a step one in terms of practice. Step two is where do you start? How do you measure? And we offered the approach, which is called resilience dynamic and resilience engine, that approaches resilience as a capacity, building capacity to adapt. It's not having the capacity to push back, but building capacity to adapt and retain that capacity through your life, through doing practical things, that allows you to, like a river in full flow, to have enough water level high enough to allow it to flow, no matter how many boulders and things are dropped into the river. So the approach we use in our organization, we introduce as a practical, not training course, no. Training course would kill it, yeah? Because you need people to engage with it. So you can do it as a workshop, as a skills workshop, or you can take it in slightly different direction and do it as a coaching, individual or group coaching. And for this dynamic resilience, identifying the levels of resilience, because it can go in different direction. And a set of practical tools to do it, which is called resilience engine, to support that. So it's a very practical thing which can be learned and can be taught.
Thank you. Ladies, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. And working with these two ladies has actually been resilience in action, because they were talking about adaptability, and we had to adapt. We had a plan, we had to adapt that plan. And also what Charles was talking about friendships, about communication. What was amazing was that these ladies also had each other's back and had my back. And that was something that's actually, it's very pragmatic, it's very important, that when somebody else can flex for you and pick up the slack, and then you flex for other people, and we help each other to grow and adapt and to learn. So that's why I call them my two new best friends, because they've been brilliant. They've been working this out in practice and making a difference in the lives around them. So thank you so much for that. So we have just two more before we come to our last one. Who would like to choose? We've got manifesto, or we've got, it should say recognition, validation. Number three. Okay, well, it's just quick. And then we'll hand over to Rolf. I was going to just talk about, because it struck me from Sina's presentation this morning, the principles that she applied to her program. I don't know how many of you were in that. And we also yesterday in a session with Andy Lancaster started to look at, what the evidence was saying about what we need to adopt as a manifesto for L&D to move forward into the new, what are the principles that we need to be abiding by moving forward? Because when everything is moving, it's our principles that hold us in that North Star. And so, again, your own private manifesto, if you have more time to say, why don't you have a look at that? But I just thought I might share with you where I had come from, looking at this issue about where learning and development needs to be. And I've kind of written about it on LinkedIn on Learning Changemakers. So my perspective is, because I had to have my notes because I'm so tired at the moment, but I'm quite happy to admit that. My perspective is that we need to be learning change makers in the organization, picking up from the Ashoka concept of change makers, that everyone can make a difference. And they are characteristics that are built into, even to young people, to kids at school, at universities, encouraged to spot something and do something about it. And to me, I thought, wow, that is such a great metaphor for us as learning professionals. And, my perspective is that our manifesto potentially needs to be the fact that we are known for tackling organizational challenges, not just learning challenges. We solve business problems through our specialities of expertise, but not necessarily we tackle learning problems. That we are empathetic systems thinkers, that we understand the context of our work in the bigger context, because it's complex, particularly with the new skills agenda, the things that need to be going on, the opportunity to practice, the opportunity to connect, the opportunity for talent retention. So we need to be empathetic systems thinker rather than kind of biopic. We need to be inspirational problem solvers, that we take all of these different areas and we apply them in new ways, and we are known for connecting the dots rather than being separate from everyone else. We have a role in connecting what's going on, that we're comfortable outside of our comfort zone. And I think that's important for us as well, that our expertise is going to continue to need to develop and adapt. And then the final one really is the fact that we get stuff done. That we're known for getting stuff done, for tackling the stuff, and for being vulnerable. So they were just my views on what we need to be doing as a profession moving forward. But I wanted to kind of sow the seed for you, and I'm sure you would have picked up a lot from this session that we've had. So the penultimate session now, I'm going to hand over. We're going to go back to the checkerboard and go to number 2. Thank you. Oh, Rolf, it's you.
Check. Okay, thank you. So, recognition or validation. Yeah, so, forgive me for being not a native English speaker and understanding the subtleness of the difference, of recognition and validation. But, the good thing is that I'm almost the last speaker, we will final point. That means I can make it brief, because I know I stand in between you, the coffee, beer, or something stronger at Marlene Bar. And what's also pretty cool is that Charles Jennings was before me, and he is this, matter of the 70-20-10 model. So most learning happens informally. The 70%, 20% non-formal, and 10% formal in universities, etc. And here at this conference, I would say, if I go around, we see a lot of input focus. So how do we learn? How do we learn better? And then this entire thing around e-learning, what are the best learning solutions, etc. And then partially also we have bets with the practice and say, okay, how you can put things into actions. But learning is happening all the times. So Don, I will refer to you now a couple of times, because you have a book, and most probably you are learning something whilst reading that book. The question is, what are you learning, and do we know about it? Okay, do you know about it yourself? And so in the past, there was like a big movement on e-portfolio, which was, if we can, do some example work, etc., can we showcase it, and then people look at it, and they would do that recognition or validation for us. And then there was like kind of a movement that arose out of that e-portfolio movement, which went into the recognition, and partially one would even could call it ideologic, the open recognition. So recognition is also, like learning, happening all the time. So it's the awareness process that starts when we think, we have a conversation, and suddenly, I understand, I get challenged. So I also understand more about my own capabilities, etc. But then it could go further, and then I would put this term validation. So there's someone else who validates what I learned. And there was this open badges movement, etc. And we have Don here, who wrote an article, I don't need your stinking badges, which I found like pretty interesting, because some of you might know him, so Don has strong opinions. But
But nobody would know that.
Yeah, so the strong opinions that he has are only in his own mind, you know, so, and that's a pretty interesting thing in how to share, how to break out of your own mind, how to get into conversation and, you know, recognize and validate. So, and there is a movement, of course, in these open badges, and one can criticize, is, for example, a badge that I would issue you that you have attended the session. Is it worth something? So Don might say, no, it doesn't have any value, because what can you validate? So, but eventually you can validate maybe an experience, something that you started to think about. Maybe you can validate a kind of a connection, and maybe you're just proud to be part of the community and you want to showcase it. So now there's something interesting happening. Like, okay, this is ICOBC, International Council on Badges and Credentials, but I do also have a job where I earn a living from, and it's at a company called LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a large professional network, and people are posting their certificates there and also their badges. And interestingly, there is a validation process happening there, and we can even do research on it. So we did that when people claimed their SAP badges. Now an SAP badge or an SAP certificate for S/4HANA qualifies you to do a certain job. And interestingly, SAP doesn't make a difference if it's an employee or a gig worker. So we are increasingly going into that gig working economy. They say, I just want that validation, and then you get the assignment. So, but now, you know, we've had a conversation with the Fosway group here with Jane, and she said, what is really interesting here is that I'm coming across a lot of higher education organizations, and I think they have a point, potentially also in the validation, so in setting up the programs and so on, learning design, but also the validation and the exam. And that can be like describe the core business. So I will go to the final point very quickly. No worries, I see you're also impatient, and so something that I've learned now in the conversation I should work on, and how to work on it, I also realized. So, but the interesting thing is that if you saw that graphic from Josh Burson, meanwhile, in the workplace learning, we have a lot of content coming in, and also content from universities, Coursera, etc., and we get the validation also externally. And now, hold your breath, there is a big movement happening in issuing credentials, badges, credentials, etc. Microsoft went into that direction, and now 2.6 million organizations worldwide can issue their credentials to validate stuff. And interestingly, when we are together, maybe also in the Marlene Bar, etc., we can do a negotiation process and mutually validate, and maybe potentially we are coming up with something like this, so where you really know you mastered something, you won a tournament or whatever, I don't know, so you master the skill, and you get recognized. So you display your recognition outside, if it's via badge or via verifiable credential. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I asked Rolf and I asked Bert to join in this final conversation, because there is such an incredible opportunity for us as learning professionals to really make a difference in the world of work, particularly with the skills agenda that is coming through, which means that we are having to prepare people, to get people equipped and ready for the future. So we're going to need to do more than just perhaps our normal programs. We've got to have practice. We've got to help people step into their new roles. So for me, Online Educa has given us so many different things to think about, but it's now down to us to join the dots and to make this a reality and to make a difference in our own organizations. And really the last number that I was going to go to was about the future and for you, but we've run out of time. But the key thing is that there are little pieces of, I'm sorry about this, little pieces of tree on the paper on the chairs near to you. I mean, I would love to know what you want from the future of Online Educa and the workplace. What's worked for you, what hasn't? Now, if you can just drop something down and maybe just stick it on the wall over there, I'll pick it up afterwards. But your voice is so important to us about what's worked, what hasn't, what we want more of, what we want less of, what you want to take away. So we really want to be able to hear from you and help us. You see, this OEB is a community. And we shape the community together. We may not meet that often, but when we do, we connect and we grow and we change together. So thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this closing conversation. And just on behalf of all of us, I'd like to really thank all of the team who have had to adapt and change and be resilient. All of the speakers, all of you as well, have had to work through all the paperwork and the masks and everything else. So thank you so much. Don, I know you always like to have the final word. Is there a word you would like to have?
I'm simply a passive observer. It's going great. You wrap up.
Well, basically, all I can say is Don will meet everyone in the bar. Thank you very much.